Hey everyone, welcome back to Berlin Noir. Today we are going to be finally getting around to updating parts of the city that have just been untouched for a long time, stuff that was built at the very beginning of the series and things that just really need an update. And for today's update, we're going to be working on Potsdamer Platz as well as Leipziger Platz right next to it. And I figured this was a good as place as any to start, since I figured, obviously it's a very important place to the city back then, and even today, although it obviously looks nothing like it, it's still a very popular place to go with all the modern developments that are really only 20, 30 years old at the oldest, many much younger. But yeah, I really wanted to try and capture a little more accurately the actual kind of road layout, the plaza here, make it a little larger, rather than simply just having kind of a basic intersection, which I had originally. So here's a picture, pretty much the most common one that I see of Potsdamer Platz. You have the station in the background as well as the Haus Vaterland. That one right in the center towards the back, and then the very background you can kind of see the Anhalter Bahnhof as well. And yeah, I wanted to just kind of be able to take similar screenshots like that photo, because the initial, or I should say the original layout here design that I had was just a simple intersection. I believed I used the intersection tool or whatever the heck it's called, where you can make it larger, make the intersection and the bends around the curves and such a little more rounded and not so small and such. I don't know why I'm blanking on the name of the mod, but I'm sure you all know what I'm trying to talk about there. But yeah, as you can see, I kind of took a rather odd route to creating this. I used they're actually meant for bridges, but it's just a plain two-way road without any sidewalks, which was very important. And I wanted to find the same thing for trams, since I didn't want to have any sort of sidewalks here where I didn't want them, or any sort of glitches or anything like that. Unfortunately, I couldn't find anything like that, so what I ended up doing for the tram roads here was using invisible tram lines, and then just using actual train track networks, as you can see here, using the rails from that to basically put them where the invisible tram line actually is. So you can kind of saw a second ago that I was using that tram right there that's still going on the tracks, just kind of making sure it's lining up reasonably, doesn't look like it's going off the tracks, and it is actually able to line up pretty easily. So I do like how that turned out. I do cover up the the stuff that you wouldn't typically see with tram tracks, right? As you see, it pretty much just looks like a tram track. Nothing fancy there, just the tracks sticking above. They're a little thinner, different color, unfortunately, as you can see, especially compared to the much darker ones. Much darker tram tracks, which aren't vanilla ones. They're made by, I believe, Klus, however you pronounce your name, which I really love the look of those tracks, but I guess, the difference in color unfortunately stands out a little bit much, but it's really not a big deal. The main thing was just trying to get a little more accurate the layout of the general road, and having the tram tracks, as you can see there, the curves are very large, very gradual, and not exactly as it was back then, but I did keep the directions the same. So they only turn towards that road off to the left, right? So I guess, as you can see, you can, from this distance or from this direction, the trams can't turn left, or if they're coming from above, they can't turn what would be right. Which is how the road layout was back then. So I decided to stick with that, and I used a little bit ago. We kind of passed it already, but I am kind of adjusting it right now. Kind of those pavement networks there. They're actually part of the big parking lot, like network assets, which are awesome for making parking lots. I love making parking lots. Obviously, doesn't really apply to something like this series here, but I decided I could use just the networks for that, which I didn't actually have to subscribe to any of the parking lots, which was nice. So I could still subscribe to the pavement and grass kind of curb networks, which actually match whatever your theme is, both for grass and pavement. So that worked out really nice. But I was able to, as you can see, basically make the curves go wherever I want, bend them, curve them, do whatever I wanted there, and fill in, of course, all the glitches and stuff since I was using those weird sidewalkless, no sidewalk roads, which obviously created those glitches, had that kind of blue nothingness that you see, with if you, for whatever reason, right at the bottom of the map, if there's nothing there, it's just that kind of like off blue color. So just using that, and of course a whole lot of ploppable pavement, asphalt texture, or surfaces, I should say. But this in the center, this little grass patch, I'm also was taking from what it was back then, just this kind of little central, I don't know, grass median, I guess. And it had this pretty famous little traffic light / clock thing, I guess. I guess someone could, I'm not sure if someone actually had to go up in there and manually control the traffic lights, since there's a little spot for someone to climb up. So I imagine that is probably how it functioned, at least for some time. And definitely I like having that larger grass median, because I had something kind of like it in the previous version that I built a long time ago, but nothing close to this. And just having everything be much larger, much more spacious was definitely the goal here, and I think it turned out pretty decent. That being said, of course, it was a little tricky considering I did have to destroy a whole lot of things. You saw at the very, very start of the episode, I destroyed quite a bit of part of the city, at least around the center of town, around the Brandenburg Gate, since I will eventually get around to updating that. And as I was destroying some roads for this episode, just to work on Potsdamer Platz, I kind of realized that I just had to really destroy a whole lot of stuff, because I more or less had to do it, or else I'd kind of risk having to maybe backtrack and destroy things that I already built again. So I just wanted to make sure that I can kind of get out the basic road layout for all the future updates, since there's some kind of wonky, funky things that they're not super big, just kind of like things on the wrong side of like other landmarks or other buildings, stuff like that. So nothing in this episode you'll see. Eventually we'll get around to it. So I guess there's not really worth mentioning right now. But yeah, there's definitely going to be a whole lot of updating stuff, rebuilding things in the near future, since I destroyed a whole lot, but especially around the Brandenburg Gate, parts of the Tiergarten. I'm even considering really completely redoing the entire thing, which as of the start of this episode I wasn't really thinking that, but as of this moment and just recently being in the save and looking around, I'm pretty sure I'm just going to scratch the whole thing and redo it. But also just under the Linden, that avenue that runs down the center from Brandenburg Gate to Museum Island, that's going to get a whole makeover. Just really the whole center of the city right there is just going to be completely redone, since it's just old and the building choices that I used back then just aren't very good. And I want to recreate some of the important buildings and monuments and such. For instance, right above this area here, from here to, I guess, Brandenburg Gate and Parischer Platz, you have all the old minister buildings, the Reich Presidents, the Chancellor building, all those types, which are completely gone now, and they're pretty hard to find pictures of, at least from what I've been looking for. So I'm pretty much just gonna have to rely on the aerial view that I have, and just using some generic kind of fancy palace-y buildings type things to build those. But I definitely want to build those. I'm actually considering doing those next. just because I actually didn't build those at all in the previous version of this area, I should say. I didn't realize those were there. Had no idea what the heck they were. Of course, at the start of the series, my knowledge of the city, especially in the 1920s, was very limited. But now it's a little better. So yeah, I definitely want to recreate that since it's really adds to, I guess, the fanciness, I should say, of the area here, and just rather than just having kind of fairly monotonous, boring blocks, which I initially had. And yeah, if you're familiar with the city, either today or even back then, you know that it was a fairly poor recreation and really didn't resemble it at all. So yeah, definitely excited to get around to fixing that in particular. But yeah, I have no idea how long it's going to take, how many episodes it's going to take. I do kind of figure I'll take a break eventually, since, like I said, I'll probably get kind of tired of it at some point, having to redo all this stuff. Who knows? Maybe I'll be able to just push through it and completely update the entire area. But if not, I'll probably head back to where we've been in the previous episodes, Hassenheide, around there, and continue working out that way, since I am enjoying that as well. But anyways, so this little here, so this is kind of like closer to Leipziger Platz, which is that kind of octagonal, right? Octagon, I believe, yes. Octagonal shaped plaza thing, which is a little small even now. I didn't really have enough room to make it larger. Considering my original choice back when I built it very early on in the series, I made it quite small. So yeah, I just didn't really have space to make it any larger. But I still have that octagonal shape. It still looks a little large. I do wish it could be larger, but I think it's still fine. So yeah, that's pretty much going to be the second half of the episode, because this is finishing up the plaza here, and then we'll get to working on Leipziger Platz. But so now moving on here to Leipziger Platz. Here's a nice picture of what it looks like back then, late 20s, maybe early 30s here. But certainly very recognizable with the octagonal shape of the roads and the pretty large grass patches there in the center, with actually one entrance to the Potsdamer Platz, or Potsdamer Bahnhof, the U-Bahn there, which I didn't actually build the first time around, but I made sure to include this time. Also, this area is a little kind of squished compared to what it was back then. So the road, as you can see, the road there to the left, and then also the Potsdamer Platz right there to the right. And then Leipziger Platz kind of squished right between them. In reality, the road goes a little longer to the left side, at least from our point of view here. It goes on a little longer there from Leipziger Platz. And I didn't really have the option to extend it. Obviously I destroyed a whole lot of things, so it wasn't really a matter of not wanting to destroy, more buildings or roads, but mostly just because there's a pretty big road, a main road that goes from Perischer Platz all the way down to Marienplatz, or I guess Bella Lions Platz, which is what it would have been called back then. So I figured it would be more important to have kind of that main road going from Perischer Platz and the Brandenburg Gate up there all the way down to Marienplatz. I figured that'd be a little more important, and I didn't want to disrupt that or cut the road off or make it bend or do anything weird like that. So I figured it made a little more sense just to kind of keep this area a little more squished, a little more stunted, I guess, and miss out on some of the buildings there, since I believe there were some I'm assuming government buildings, not entirely sure actually, but yeah, I just didn't want to disturb that main road going down, so that's why I decided just to leave it like this, which again, I don't think is a huge deal. Obviously if I had planned it better from the start, obviously they could have included some more space here for it. But unfortunately, I did not, so we're kind of stuck with this. But yeah, I guess in the grand scheme of things, once I fill everything in the surrounding area, right, update the city and all that stuff, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. But I will miss out on that. I guess it's the Bundesrat, if I'm not mistaken, that I don't really have room to build. Which, yeah, I guess that's a pretty important building, obviously. But yeah, I don't know. It's just simply no room for it. So yeah, a little unfortunate, but considering I'll be able to now build and include like the Reich Chancellor building, the Reich Minister, the Reich President building, all those fancy buildings that are lined up along the road, I think that'll make up for it, I guess, at least. Best. So at this point, I'm not entirely sure what I want to build next. I do have my mind made, I guess, between either doing Parish or Platz with the Brandenburg Gate, of course, or working on, I guess, the Reich Minister building, the President and Chancellor building, which are all directly to the right of where we are now, along that main road there. So let me know in the comments which one you would like to see first. I don't really care which one we get around to doing first, but I think that makes sense. It's a logical next step, next thing to update from where we are now, since it's directly above this in the city. So yeah, comment which one you want to see. Most likely then whatever one is less popular, or the second choice will be the following episode after the next. And then from there, who knows what we'll do if we continue working on updating the city, or get back to some other part of the city. Not entirely sure yet, but we'll see. But so anyways, yeah, so more or less just finishing up the episode here. Not a whole lot left. Here I'm just doing some very basic detailing with the grass here, just obviously outlining it here with some fences, since it's quick and easy to do. It just adds, another layer. But I wanted to add a little more, I guess, personality, you could say, to this, since initially I pretty much just put trees down. Didn't really do a whole lot. Here I'm including the U-Bahn station here for the Potsdamer Platz. I guess one of the entrances to that station there. And then still adding trees, since from all the pictures I saw, basically this is all it was. Just a fence, some trees, and then the station there. Pretty simple, but yeah, definitely I'm glad we got around to updating this and Potsdamer Platz as well. But yeah, so the last thing that we're updating here, fixing, is the front of Potsdamer Bahnhof. So I don't know, I guess this made sense just to do in this episode, since I kind of just kept going. I didn't really plan on doing it, although of course it's right next to it, so I might as well. I didn't really do a whole lot different than what was here originally. I more or less just cleaned it up, I guess. Added a little more nicer details, made it look a little more nicer. Since I do add that, as you see, that grass patch there, which was there, I should say, back then. I wanted to add some decals there, some stone decals, just to add a little more detail. So since it's a pretty large area there in the front, I didn't want to just have that kind of boring stone pavement that we have all around the city. So yeah, I just wanted to, I like those stone decals, that one in particular, that kind of has that fanned stone pattern, which is really nice. And then also I still include what I guess is a parking lot, a very, very small parking lot, which I just remember all the way back when I built this episode being like, is that a parking lot? And just like, I didn't know parking lots existed back then. Kind of thought that was, I guess, a little more of a modern development. But yeah, it's really, really small, and it was a little more to the left, I guess, kind of left of that one green patch that I just built there a second ago. But I kind of wanted to make the entrance a little more larger. I didn't want to stick anything there in the front. I wanted it to look like, people could gather there in the front. I'd have some Morris columns or some kiosks or whatever that I add in a second. But I decided to squeeze a little parking lot right here on the side, since, again, it wasn't very large. And but nonetheless, it's an interesting thing since, like I said, I didn't expect there to be parking lots back then. Since I don't think there was any other, at least based on the aerial view, I haven't seen any other somewhat large parking lots, which of course isn't large, but I guess by back then standards, it stands out. But yeah, I don't know if there were more parking lots, just for my own edification and just something interesting to see. I'd like to know where those were, just so I can look them up, just to see what they looked like. Since it's just I don't know. Like I said, I think I said at the start of the episode, I like parking lots. I like building parking lots. They're fun, and building in game. But yeah, I don't know. Kind of a random rant there. Whatever. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the episode. Just finishing up some minor detailing still. Just kind of like a nice little garden setting there on that little piece of grass there. Some bushes, trees. Same thing here, just adding some bush clusters, flower clusters, whatever those are. And then some trees as well, which I believe is how it was, what was here back then as well. But yeah, that's going to do it for this episode. Let me know again what you want to see next, parachute plots or those government buildings there along the road. Either way, they're right next to each other, so if we don't get around to it next week, then it'll probably be the week after that. But if you enjoyed this episode, definitely give it a thumbs up. If you want to see me continue updating the city and the older parts of the city, give it a thumbs up as well. Let me know that you like to see this type of stuff, because I could always get around to building new stuff as well. But yeah, let me know, and I will see you all in another episode.